This company's never been more profitable.
You mean hugely profitable?
I like it.
DavePorter.com presents The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship. The one podcast that's not afraid to discuss real sales strategies with real cleaning professionals that produce real profits and real results.
All right. Well, I'm happy to have you on the show here, Ernesto. We make a really big point on The Profitable Cleaner to interview people we know have experience, expertise, and are going to bring value. I was so happy to connect with you a few weeks ago on LinkedIn. Very rarely does a LinkedIn profile jump off the screen at me. And when I was reading about your bio and your experience, I told Angel, I said, hey, this Ernesto guy, we need to speak with him. And here we are. So Ernesto, welcome to the Profitable Cleaner podcast. For simple introductions, just tell us who you are and kind of what you do.
Well, born and raised in San Jose. My name's Ernesto Moreno, and was brought into this industry by a man named Hank Sanchez, who owned a company called Acme Building Maintenance back in the early 80s. I was in the restaurant business, and he used to come in for final on his way home because he lived around the corner, and I was bartending, and he kind of said, hey, why are you doing this? And how much money do you make? And you speak a few languages, you're educated, and why the restaurant business? And then he began to sell me on his industry, and it seemed interesting. At the time, I kind of felt bad saying, Mom, Dad, you paid for my college education, and I'm going to be a janitor now. And essentially out of my parents' mouth was, well, then be a good one. So off I went, and I went to work for the Sanchez family at Acme, and worked for a few other companies along the way. And Santa Clara Valley here, the Silicon Valley at that time, was blowing up, and commercial building services were more and more prevalent as opposed to companies hiring a janitor in-house. In-house services versus contract services, to some degree, still are more so in the academic arena, more so than the commercial building maintenance aspect of it in multi-tenants, electronics, and such. So off I went, and in 1993, left a partnership of a company which is currently called Flagship, and they're a nationwide company now, but it was started by David Pasek in 1988. Worked with him as a minority partner until 1993, and we formed Moreno Associates in a small partnership. And since that time, I've taken it over completely, and we are starting our 30th year. So a couple blinks and 30 years goes by. I'm blessed to say that my oldest daughter, Kylie, is running our development and sales, and my second daughter, Kennedy, is in charge of customer service and all of our social media. So she'll be happy to get a piece of this and share it. And they're very good at what they do. But I have a whole team. We're probably 10, 15 people deep here in the office. And quite frankly, I think it's a lot for having, just in excess of 200 or so custodians. But how and why we do things is probably why we're the way that we're configured now. So that was a long story to a quick question.
No, it's great background. I want to talk about that how and why. And one thing that you have on your website, which I really love, and I think this might go into it, is you guys talk about more than clean, Moreno clean, right? I think that's a catchy tagline, so good marketing. But talk about that more than clean, and you not using your degree to be a janitor, like you said when you were early on in your career. There's so much more to being than just a janitor or running a janitorial company. More than just a cleaner. When you guys use that slogan, more than clean, what does that mean? Speak to me about that why.
Well, essentially the why was that there were large companies out there, they're national corporations, ABMs, some of the largest Sodexo and such that, it was just a whole mega companies. But then also there were the mom and pops that, had their side jobs, and they were first generation Latinos here in the Santa Clara Valley. And, they would get business and they would do tremendous jobs. But, if dad got sick or if mom got sick, they couldn't go clean, and there would be excuses. And I really felt there was a place in the middle, a place where a smaller company like Moreno Associates that started could go to these small to medium, even larger corporations and say, hey, we're going to touch you. We're not. The biggest excuse I kept hearing from clients as to why they would fire the person that I was replacing was because they were great for a couple of months, and then we'd pick up the phone and we'd get an answering machine, or we couldn't get a hold of anybody. Really wasn't a big deal what we were looking for, but it was like the Maytag repairmen, and they would call and nobody would be there. And so the profile that we wanted to set up at our company was that we're going to be there as much as you want us to be there, beyond our frontline workers. We're gonna understand what your needs are. We're going to provide you those needs, but then we're going to come around and we're going to touch you. We're not going to sit in our office and wait for you to call us. So some clients wanted to see you all the time. Other clients wanted to never see you. But we said we need to get in the building to do a couple things. Support our frontline worker to say, do you have the tools, the chemicals, the know-how that you need? Is your facility receptive to the requirements of the business? And this is where some people don't understand is your client may want A, but the building will only allow B. And so we as professionals through experience have to be able to tell the client, I get what you want, but here's what we suggest, because if we want to do it your way, it's either going to be too difficult, unsafe, or too expensive. So there's always a modicum of expense, right? So we wanted to do the best job we could possibly do, reach out and touch our client periodically, offer them our expertise, and then on top of that, be financially prudent to their expenses and spend their money when they needed to, but not always. What people will understand is you come in to replace a company that they're not happy with, and 9 times out of 10, they'll hand you the specifications as to what the other company was doing. And so you go, wait a minute here. We're just not, what we do is basically similar, yet it's different. So the question is, what makes you different? Well, what makes us different is that if we set up your shop, your business, your building to be successful on our end of it a certain way, after 90 days or after 60 days, we want to make sure that's still set up operationally. Secondly, we want to make sure that what we said we're going to do, we're actually doing. We want to set baselines for quality. So the worst thing a contractor like myself can hear, well, it's been like that for months. Well, wait a minute. Kennedy just came in and saw you last week. He said everything was great. Yeah, well, okay. Well, this person said it's been like that for months. So by establishing a baseline on a periodic basis, once a month, once a quarter, twice a year, once a year, whatever the client wants, you say, okay, we were here, now we're still here, and everything's great. So that when I come to them at the end of the year and saying, we've got a little cost of living increase, minimum wages have gone up, it doesn't blow up in our face saying, well, we're not really happy with your services, so turn around and go away. My customer service representatives can say, you kind of are happy with our services, and here's how we were. So it's a defense mechanism, but primarily it's our way of being Moreno and Associates and supporting our frontline workers at the same time. Our frontline workers get the equipment, the tools, the knowledge, the training that they need, and then they're left out of it to let us deal with the client so that we can disseminate the client's needs to the custodian. So there's not 5 or 6 people coming down on that guy the minute he shows up, or that young lady that shows up to do their work, that they understand that they work for us and we work for the client.
So, quick question for you, because I know some people hearing this. I know you said quality control is like super important, right? First of all, this might sound like a rookie thing to say from my end, but I'm surprised how many people go to a walkthrough. They just get the scope of work of the company that was working on it before, even though the client's not happy with the work they're doing. So I'm glad that one of the best things you do is you go get the scope of work, but you gotta revise it. You gotta look at what's actually going to work, not just from the client's perspective, but from yours too. Because if you can't fulfill it, you're gonna end up in the same spot. So let me ask you something. Since I know quality is important to you, what kind of systems do you have in place to make sure that the quality is there? And then two, this is more fun. If you guys do mess up, let's say you're like, oh man, we said we're gonna do this and we're here. Do you go and renegotiate with the client, even if that means lowering the amount, or do you guys end up pushing more? Like, what does that kind of conflict or quality resolution look like over there?
So over the years, there's been a lot of argument within my own operational processes and what we put in place. From a simple checklist inspection by the supervisor to a thorough, back when at the beginning of LEED qualification standards for buildings, there was an 8-point checklist that the custodial department could assist the building in getting the level of LEED certification that they were looking for, right? We couldn't assist with filling a building, but we could assist with 8 points of doing our portion for their certification. And so we worked off of that for a while. And then we tried to simplify it and maybe do small client surveys and such, and different protocol. Probably about 15 years ago, I seem to do this when I go on vacation. I've got time and I'm sitting by the pool or something, or playing golf, and have some time to think away from the office. And I came up with what was called the Mops System, kind of an acronym, and it was the Mops, Moreno Operational Performance Scale. and so it was it was a 5-point checklist, and we tried to introduce that, but and I'm sure we'll talk about this down the road. But one of the biggest processes that or issues that we have in this industry is we're dealing with human beings. We're not dealing with machines. Many times, or most times, people working in a part-time environment, if it's not their full-time job, it's their second full-time job, or it's their first part-time job. Okay, period. If everybody says that's not the case, well, they're either paying their people too much, or they're getting paid too much by the client. Our individual, our frontline cleaner, most of them did not get set and saying, I want to be a janitor the rest of my life. It's generally a stepping stone. So we got to a position where we were really pushing for the frontline worker to do the things we needed them to do, even the field supervisors. And many times we'd come back in and the keys would be on the table and saying, look, I don't need this. I just need a second job. I'll do the best I can, and don't push me like that because I'll be gone. If you guys know this industry, I could put you in this 10 by 10 room, give you 8 hours to clean it, and the next day come back and find something you missed. Okay, So many clients would also say, well, it's not as clean as my house, and my house is this, and my house is that. And I'd say, wait, how long do you pay your housekeeper? You might maybe have a 1,500 square foot house, a 2,000 square foot house, and you guys deal with housekeepers. Well, it's a 4-hour minimum for most people. Okay, 2 hours at least you're going to get. It's not going to come in to your 1,000 square foot house or 2,000 square foot house and do 30 minutes. I said the game that we play at the commercial level is that we have to compete with the competition that comes in and says, we can do your 60,000 square foot building in 8.5 hours. Okay. So if you have a 4-hour minimum to do a 2,000 square foot house, the math is 40x. It doesn't compare. If it was the same math to do your house it is to do the building, it doesn't compare. So don't compare the cleanliness of your house to the cleanliness of your commercial building. Okay. We can only do a certain amount of things unless you want to pay for this. And so the differential always comes there. So managing the quality control is as difficult, and the inspections is as difficult as balancing your labor base and getting some level of satisfaction from the client. It has to be somewhere in the middle. And then when COVID hit, everything went to hell in a handbasket, and we had to start something different. But that's kind of the answer to that question, Angel.
I like it.
No, that's
I like it.
I love the Mops.
You guys have internal systems, right?
We
Softwares,
do
things
have
like
systems,
that. Okay.
and I'm also, if you guys don't mind, I'm bragging a little bit. I became a partner in a training video company about 10 years ago that was geared towards the smartphone and geared to the frontline worker, not to the white collar guy. Well, we were developing this app, which now is a web-based, before people even had smartphones. The flip phones were still out there, so it says it's coming. But have two partners that came from the film industry out of Hollywood, and they have done a number of dynamic short vignettes, 2 to 4 minute vignettes with well-known Spanish-speaking actors, and it comes in kind of a telenovela form. And essentially what we're doing is, if you hand somebody an employee handbook and say, read it, sign the back, I got to put it for my human resources department. Are you really training them? Are you really engaging them? What we do through the company's called Xemana, Xemana, we engage our employees, and then we expand from there. So that's one of the platforms that we're using. We're bringing it out to the public little by little. It's technology is always a hard thing to keep up with, but we're looking forward to sharing that more and more with people within our company and marketing it out to other companies as well. And I know that you guys have a big training program that you're involved with.
Yeah.
I think that's great, man. I think the emphasis on training is good, but what I hear when I'm listening to you talk, Ernesto, is I keep hearing, like, what comes to my mind is people, the importance and emphasis on people. When I looked at your website, the thing that jumped off the page to me outside of your experience was your company team page, and it was the people on that page. Talk to me about over 30 years. You started in this industry from the bottom, and then now look at you. You have over 200 plus employees combined. Like, talk to me how, like, one that might be listening to this, maybe they're a smaller shop, they're thinking 20 years down the road, and you said it happens in a blink of an eye. How do they put the right people in place, and how do they start developing a team to help them turn from 5 people to 20 people to 100 people?
Well, I think one of the main things is you build a relationship. In my door, I think this is the first time I ever put a sign on my door. I'm in a meeting because I didn't know how this would relate. But when I'm in town, when I'm in my office, my door is open to my custodians. Now, they need to call and say, hey, I'd like to come in and see you. Absolutely. Let's pick a time. You know, human resources doesn't always like it. My dean in front says, you know, this person's here to see you. Okay, let me see you. What's this about? I'll talk to you privately. Okay, well, I got to bring in human resources with that in today's world. 30 years ago, it was a little different. I was in the field. I was hands-on. I was doing operations. I was working side by side with these individuals. And I really believe that our current success 30 years later was built on the foundation that it's people first. And one of our statements that we always live in this environment here is family first. And if you want to have your kids grow up and go watch them play soccer or football, whatever, and there's a time where we can fit you into a swing shift or a graveyard shift, be part of that team. We're going to make it work for you. It may seem silly, but I look at my team as an upside down pyramid, and I'm at the very bottom of that pyramid. At the very top are my frontline workers. Can we always be successful? No. But I will tell you 100% of the time that I've had to let somebody go, they know why they're being let go. There's no surprise. There's no surprises in what we do. We get paid to make somebody's facility look better. What we sell, my director of operations, Paul Lehman, we've been friends for 31 years. Before we were working mates, but we've worked together for 31 years. He's got little idioms that he uses with his team. If it's not unsafe, if it's not illegal and it's not immoral, you need to do it. Okay, that's all we're asking. If it's unsafe, if it's illegal, or if it's immoral, you can tell us to go, fly a kite. You don't have to do it. And you'll never be held accountable for that. Secondly, say what you're going to do what you say. Okay. And third, we're here for you. Communicate with us. Talk to us. We're here. You also mentioned what happens, when the client's not happy and they're all up in arms and stuff. Well, again, we're not building rocket ships. We're in the building maintenance. If we did something wrong, okay, and you call us and you're all upset because whoever called you is all upset, or you're the person, we're going to get in our car and we're going to show up. Okay. There's a good chance the worst thing that can happen is you're going to fire me, but you're not going to hit me. You're not going to shoot me. I mean, we're human beings. So this last Christmas party, my operations manager, Salvador, and Paul, I bought them a nice Christmas present and put it in a box and everything. They opened it up. Well, it was a little fireman's hat with a little bell and a little light on it. And I said, you guys are truly the firemen. No offense to first line responders, but in this last year, we were first line responders. We were putting masks and gloves on and going into buildings. And in March of 2020, we were those janitors, hey, just clean up, just dust, do this, do that, and the other. And at the end of March, we came back as biophysicists. We had to know exactly how to, we were viral specialists, and we were, we had to know how to keep their world safe because otherwise they were going to die. And I've said, I've been in this business 35 years. We've been telling you that bacteria and viruses are out there, people. So, it's just not clean the toilets and empty the trash and get out. We want to keep your people's environment safe. And the problem with that is it takes time, and time is money, and labor rates have gone through the roof. And how can you be effective? Because as janitors, as building maintenance services, if you're doing this right and fair for long-term relationships, you live in the single-digit margin world after your overhead, your profits, okay? If anybody's listening to this and is not in the business to make profit, then they're a different style of business that they can give away their services because of benevolence. But for the most people that are listening, how do you provide a good service, maintain a long-term relationship, and still make money? And the deal is you do the right thing, you're fair, you treat your people right, you pay them what they deserve, and you set up the program according to how you can do the job the best you can do it within a reasonable period of time. If I can do a job in 2 hours in one night, okay, that means if I'm running through the building and I can get it done in 2 hours, I'm not going to sell 2 hours. I'm going to sell 3, because you're coming in off another job. You're tired. You can't always be at your game. So if I'm only paying you 2 hours, people are going to giggle. If I don't have a geofence over you, if I don't have you punching inside the building, you're probably going to leave a little early because you're tired. And then you need to get to the next thing. But we work with our people and we listen to them.
I have a question for you,
Mm-hmm.
because the cool part about this podcast is I get to be selfish, right? I get to ask questions that I want to know for myself, and in return, the listeners get to enjoy this. I have a question. So you said if you're in it for the long run, right? For janitorial, you give a good price, right? You put in the right amount of scope of work, and you're in your single digits margin. If you're not, then you're taking a loss. Like a national company can probably takes a loss just to take a name, right? To get a big account. Question for you. Is there such thing as making too much of a profit margin in account? Like what is the gauge between this is what I should be aiming for, and then whoa, these guys are, I'm sure you've seen an account that you're like, whoa, you're paying, I don't know, 15,000 a month, and we could do this for 10,000 just because they're just overcharging you, like simply because they're over expecting. Is there such thing as that, or do you take every dollar you can because of how small the margins are in general?
Well, it's interesting, Angel, that you asked that. I think that the answer to that is in your long-term relationship. If you
Okay.
can maintain an account for a number of years and you think that your client has not checked your pricing, I got a bridge to sell you. It's a very simple. There's a number of things that we manage when it comes to the economy. Size of the building, density of population of the building, requirements of the job, okay? And so you throw all these factors in, level of service, you're going to treat a manufacturing facility different than a Class A lawyer's, office or what have you. There's industry standards that your competition knows just as well as you do. So if I'm competing, if I lose a piece of business to a mom and pop, well, I know that they don't have a 7,000 square foot building and 15 people in overhead, and that, they're just getting in their car and they're going, and I can't compete with that. I can't compete with a multinational corporation that says, these are the parameters that we're going to pay for you to do janitorial services, regardless of the area that you're in. And so if this division loses money, they don't care because it's gross revenue to improve the size of their company. A lot of venture capital companies are building, buying these janitorial companies like mine, and then they roll it up and they sell it to money market groups. If you're in it for the long haul and you want your name on the business, like ours is, you have to live in the single digit world. Now, mind you, I've raised my family. We've made a good living. We've worked hard over 30 years to get the nicer things, to get a house, to get a new car every 10 years or what have you. And I've hired people that make reasonable incomes to the competition so that I can have some free time. But see, we also build in redundancies. If Jim's gone and Angel knows what James does, then they kind of can take care of each other. Say, hey, my wife just got in a bumper, a fender bender. I got to go. Well, you can't go. We got to get this finished in the next couple hours. I got you covered. Okay. Or I can go to this meeting for you. So there's redundancies. And even with our redundancies, maybe we could get our profit margins up into a higher percentage rate. But the margins in our industry, to be fair, okay, depending how you look at how you do your accounting, because we do our accounting by where we build in our overhead and our G&A before we look at our profit, and our profit is truly just pre-tax. It's single digits. It has to be, because otherwise, I think you're either taking advantage of your relationship with your client, or you're about to get canned because CFO is going to come in and say, why are you paying them twice what the market bears? So.
You're on mute.
That answers my question. Sorry, I'm over here talking about myself. Yeah, that answers my question. So it depends on how you want to take advantage of the relationship in a good way. Like if it's a long term, you want to price it fair. I like that you know what game you're playing. I don't know how many people know what game they're playing. I was just talking to another commercial cleaner, and a lot of people don't understand the game they're in and what the long term looks like. So I like your points on those two.
Well, I
Hey,
think.
Ernest.
Yes, go ahead, Jay.
No, please finish your
I
thought.
was saying, referring back to the individuals in the upside down pyramid, I think they take pride, the individuals, when they say, did my boss just fire that client because they weren't reasonable? Now, there have been very few clients that we've ever had to fire, okay? But there have been times where, I guess best said is that you let the client know, we're just not the best fit for you. And believe it or not, having the number of years in this industry in the Valley, I got a lot of friends who are in the business. You guys saw Chicago. We're all friends. We're all competitors, but we're all fighting the same fight. We're all swimming in the same direction. And so if you're that bad client, that bad agent out there, don't think that the guys swimming in the same direction don't talk to each other at lunch or every now and then at a bar. Hey, you guys took over that business. Good luck. Yeah, I don't know why we took it over, but it's in our pile now. So you do the best you can, and the best you can hope for when it comes to the competition, that if you lose a piece of business is because you couldn't be successful, and that somebody doesn't come in the back door and says, which bid do you want? I can write you a check every month for $1,000, or I can we can go out to lunches once a week. And that used to happen a lot in the early 80s and stuff. It doesn't happen as much anymore. The good old boy networks where purchasing agents would be, the ethics in corporate world has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, everything goes in the 80s, huh?
Well, and that's when I came on board, really hating what was known as illegal subcontracting, by where somebody would take advantage of an immigrant and say, look, I've got $1,000 on this job, and I'll pay you $500 a month cash to go do it. Well, first of all, illegally, moral, unsafe. And secondly, it's just wrong. And it's not long for the competition to bear market. And the market had to be trained that there were a lot of those people out there. And, you have a human being in your building and they're not properly insured, they're not properly trained, they're not properly vetted. They could walk out of your building with $10 million worth of equipment, or they could slip and fall and sue you, and the person that's hired them illegally doesn't have the right insurance. And, a lot of that in my opinion, in today's world, has gone to the wayside. So we're playing with more of an even playing field now.
Totally. No, I think
love
that's really well said there, Ernesto. I guess my last question for you here is, what would you say, or what do you want the legacy of Moreno and Associates to be? I hear a lot of legacy when you speak. I'm just curious if you've ever thought of that and what comes to mind.
Well, it's interesting because it was about 3 years ago that I retired my first associate, and as my sales director, Tom Zipsey, he was with me for 20 years. And then 2 years ago, Phil Hacker retired as they were moving on into their 65s and 66s. And now there's been 4 or 5 of them that have retired. Well, the 2 legacies are left. There's Stacy Hacker, our company president, that's been with me for 30 years, and myself. It's time for us to kind of step back and watch what happened, keep moving, and I want to be more of a bridge in the future than a hurdle, and help my kids learn. I got on a text chain with my daughter the other day. I was actually playing golf, and we were doing a bid over texting about, she'd say, well, how much for this? And I'd say, well, how big is the building? So we went back 8 or 9 times, and I did the simple math but it wasn't just simple math. It was like, before you put something out there to the client, you have to understand all their needs and idiosyncrasies. And so what would be most important to me is that my kids, or whoever takes over, keeps in their windshield what it is that we do. Do it right, do it professionally. And, actually remember what my mom and dad said to me at the very beginning. Well, if you're going to be a janitor, be a good one. And that has a lot to do with everything. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not an electrician. I'm a janitor. Okay. I want to be the best janitor I can possibly be. So we've grown organically. We've always intended to grow organically. I've tried to buy some companies in the past, but it hasn't worked out. And I want them to walk into a room and say, I'm the best janitor for you, and take pride in wearing that on their lapel. So
I love that. That's a great legacy.
I love that too.
I gotta ask a question. Last question here from me personally. Let's say somebody, Ernesto, unlike us, I'm just kidding. There's some people that, they're gonna skip through the episode. They're not gonna listen to it. They're gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna just wait for the secret sauce or the last advice, however you want to say it. There's a lot of people that don't read the book. They just read the back cover, or they just read the show notes. So I have to ask you a question. Let's say somebody skipped to the end and they said, let me just hear what Ernesto has for me here. What would be one advice if they could only remember this podcast by one sentence, one advice, one tip, one everything? Everything else doesn't matter. What would you give a commercial cleaner that wants to be in your shoes and possibly even bigger?
It's very simple, but it's brought in through many years of experience, and the math, the operations, everything boils down to one thing every night when you go to sleep. Did I do the right thing? The answer is do the right thing. And that can go in anything, whether it's math, whether it's cutting corners, whether it's anything that you do in this business. Are you doing the right thing?
I love that. Boom. So ask yourself, if you're
that's the
listening
mic
to
drop.
this podcast, just ask yourself, did you do the right thing? Did you bid correctly? Did I went and get the right knowledge? A lot of people go and they just want somebody else to do the work for them. What is the right thing when it comes down to growing your business, learning it? Like you said, you could have given the answer to your daughter right away, but the right thing is letting her figure it out, and like you said, be a bridge of knowledge for her. So Ernesto, it's been a hell of a pleasure. I got to tell you, James told me a lot about you, and he said you guys had an awesome conversation. I can see why. Every question comes backed by experience, intuition, knowledge, and truly like a serving heart. So thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you.
Well, I hope it hasn't
Yeah,
just been
thank
a
you.
bunch of hot air. So,
It's
Not
gonna be
at all,
amazing.
man.
right, and then
All I know,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, all I know, Ernesto, is if we're gonna have a podcast guest on, it's got to be a good one. And you're a good one.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Appreciate it, and look
Well,
forward
guys,
to seeing you guys in Denver.
yeah, no, thank you. And guys, if you want to connect with Ernesto, we'll put his LinkedIn here. Check out his website. Check out his company, right? And let us know if you got something out of this and that Ernesto told you about, and you got some advice that you're going to implement. Let him know. Let us know so that we can keep bringing some amazing speaker like this. Again, once again, thank you so much, Ernesto. I appreciate it.
Thank you.